You know, I've been thinking a lot about isolation lately. Being someone who generally has a preference for it, by the way, this is my worst map by far. You want to see me get absolutely owned in a map? Watch me play Havana. I am much better at Nuketown and basically all of the snowy maps. Those are the ones I have the most. Hell, even firing range. Um, I'm gonna get absolutely fucking raped in this map. Anyway, um, I've been thinking a lot about. Let me turn this down. I've been thinking a lot about isolation lately, as well as my general preference for it, and the times, in my life not so recently when I thought I actually didn't have a preference for it due to changing circumstances and a lot of confusion on my part, a lot of discomfort with things that were just kind of a fact of life for me that I needed to come to accept. um, I wasn't so much treating people as people that I could interact with as much as I was distractions that were still nonetheless draining. Um, but, with those brief lapses in character for me aside, I've seemed generally consistent in my preference for being alone. And I've been bringing this up to my mom because for the past like several months, one of my special interests has been mountain men. I've been reading all of these books about mountain men, as well as doing as much research about them online as I possibly can. And I've been talking to my mom about it, and she's been, going on these, uh, similar tangents to me about how I've always just kind of been a bitter old man. She said that when I was a baby, I came out an old man. That I didn't come out screaming and crying the way that all of my siblings did. I just came out kind of looking around, thinking, "Oh, I'm here now." And she told me, when I got a little bit older, when I was around two, and she's told me this story so many times, that I would refuse to have her or my dad or my older stepbrother play with me at all, or engage in whatever activity I was doing with me. I would always insist that I do it by self. I did not say by myself because I lacked the ability to do so at the time. I would simply say by self. And I feel like that's really indicative of, my general personality and how I've preferred to do things. She told me something I actually didn't remember in that same conversation. How, as I got a little bit older, I got this spy alarm, and I would set it up by my door to make it such that anybody who entered my room, I would immediately be notified that they were in there. And so this spy alarm would go off. And by the way, I was like 7, like 6 years old at the time. I would run to the room and then give a speech about how they couldn't be in my space without asking me and they should have consulted me first. And one day my mom learned how to disable the alarm, and when I found out, I gave her this huge speech, again, as like a fucking 7-year old, about how that was my private property and she shouldn't touch it. Um, so I always had kind of a get off my lawn attitude. And I think this is really interesting because, like, my my fundamental personality, like the way that I've always been, hasn't really changed. Like, I've become a much better person in the sense that, like, I've learned a lot more about how to treat people. I've learned a lot more about having restraint, how to have restraint, and my moral values, as well as just like developing them, making them less contradictory. I've been able to hone them in such a way as to apply them more consistently across the board. So I've become a lot better in terms of how I treat people and in terms of how reliable I am and so forth. But like the way that I am, it's like it's just stayed the same like forever. And I think that's really interesting because recently my girlfriend did a deep dive on my channel, where she went back and watched the videos that you can actually find from when I was like a child, like a young kid. And she said that the way that I describe things, and my demeanor hasn't changed like at all. It's just that I've become more confident over time, um, and and so it's like, yeah, there's this rigidness to me in a number of respects, but I find that rigidness to be most prominent in my general distaste for humanity, as well as my dislike of having people in my space. Like, you know, the other day, uh, I was having some really minimal face to face interaction about half an hour after I woke up, and it felt like the sides of my head were like fucking um, closing in on me. It was like there was this immense pressure from both sides of my head, and it felt like my whole body was being weighed down. Like I couldn't properly process what was going on around me, because it felt like, even though everyone's voice was at a normal volume, it was just so loud that like my body felt like physically overwhelmed. And so I ended up just like retreating back into my shell. I I definitely need time to myself. Um, I feel like I've been at my most unstable when I've just kind of used people almost like a substitute for drugs. Like I've used people as like this escapism that I can use to like shut out my brain and shut out my thoughts. But for most of my life, I've been really comfortable with my thoughts, been really comfortable with being alone, because most of my life I spent, just spending time by myself. Um, I think, after I had those two really bad relationships over the course of like 2 years, 2021 and 2020, uh, it really did a number on me. Oh, the array, finally, a map that I'm actually decent at. Um, but I, I'm just glad to be able to, you know, be past that now, and more authentically express myself, and live my life in a way that feels more like I'm the person that exists beneath my skin. Because when I was, you know, relying on people as a distraction all the time, even though it was making me tired, even though it was making me miserable, when I was looking for jobs constantly, or working constantly, like that was one of the most miserable times I've ever had in my whole life. Like in 2022, I tried to kill myself multiple times, and now it's like I almost never have thoughts like that. Sometimes um, I'll have flashbacks to the way that the Canadian border guards treated me, and when I have those flashbacks, I'll want to kill myself, or I won't so much want to as much as I'll start thinking about it, like these really vivid images of me shooting myself, or walking into a bus or something will just come like shooting through my head. Um, But that's, you know, strictly in the context of remembering those traumatic memories. Like, those border police, it's like they really did give me lifelong trauma. But, um, you know, in general, I'm, you know, more than comfortable being by myself most of the time now. And it's like I feel so rejuvenated. I feel so much better, the fact that I can do that now. Now, it isn't to say that I don't like having friends or that I don't want to see friends sometimes. You know, I don't have some kind of radical misanthrope ideology where, you know, I just want to be invisible to all people or some, you know, gay shit like that. I just I just like being by myself sometimes. Well, maybe more than sometimes, but I get grumpy when I don't have that, and in that sense, I'd like for people to get off of my lawn.